It's one of the most controversial topics that hit central New York in decades. The consensus report suggests, among other things, the possible merger of Onondaga County with the city of Syracuse. But will it work? And will the potential benefits outweigh the drawbacks? We'll try to find out. But first, welcome to this special edition of Central here on Fox 68 and My 43. I'm Daniel Pluff, welcoming you back to a new season and a very difficult topic indeed. This consensus report will be in the news here in Central New York for probably the next couple of years. We're going to try to summarize it and sift through the details with one of the co-chairs of the committee. Dr. Neil Murphy joins us. He's retired after 30 years from O'Brien and Geer and past president of SUNY ESF. I'm not sure if this is your idea of retirement, Neil, but good for you. We've got so much to cram, and I love these shows, but there's a lot to get into here, so we'll dispense with all the pleasantries. Hello, welcome, glad you're here. Question number one, in essence, consensus. What is it?
Well, consensus is a body that has been commissioned of 19 members, basically to look at ways that we can modernize government here in Onondaga County.
Who put this together? Whose idea was it?
Well, it's had a long history. Certainly the Center State CEO, the business people looking at ways that government can be modernized. Syracuse 2020 had done quite a bit of work in this area. The Citizens League has been involved and had issued a report in this area.
And the idea, Neil, is not out of the blue. I mean, there's some precedents here. Other communities, other cities have looked at doing this type of thing?
Absolutely. We've looked at almost a half a dozen what I would call peer institutions that have gone through this. Some of the most notable ones are Louisville and Indianapolis.
I read about that.
Yep. Definitely the city of Princeton and the county of Princeton is they're looking at things. Was
there a cost to this study? Do I dare ask who funded it or how we paid for this?
Yes, there was a cost. We hired a consultant, CGR out of Rochester, and Joe Stefko taking the lead on the work. It was approximately $200,000, and it was funded by through a grant that was provided by Senator DeFrancisco with assistance of Senator Valesky.
Okay. Now, when I first heard about this, I was a little excited. I really get into this stuff, and I thought, whoa, this is going to be a way to essentially cut taxes. As I read both the summary and the full report, you'll be proud of me, it wasn't necessarily the goal to save taxes as I'm reading this. We may save some taxes, but that wasn't the initial goal.
No, there are really three primary goals. I think the first is how can we create economic development? Because almost every community that's gone through this has had a surge in economic development that has followed their efforts. The second was really an issue of diversity and inclusiveness. How do we make sure that we engage as many of the diverse populations as we can into the effort and engage them in government? And I think the third was simply how can we modernize the governance process?
It might have been easier to sell because you're getting some pushback already, which we'll talk about. Would it have been easier to sell if there was more emphasis on tax savings? We're all complaining about taxes.
Well, I think our sense is that if we can modernize government in the delivery of services by government, we're going to save money. I think that's a foregone conclusion.
So here's what I read, and I guess you've identified the main overreaching problem here is that the size and cost of government continues to increase. Meanwhile, the tax base, revenue, is decreasing.
Exactly.
You say in your report, the committee says, this metrics is unsustainable.
That's exactly it.
So is this your idea of maybe sending a warning shot over the bow to say we've got to do something?
Well, yeah, we know the commission members feel as though we can do better than what we're doing. And we've done the baseline report where we really dove very deep into who does what, so to speak, in terms of services provided by government. And we've really analyzed in a lot of depth the cost of those services.
Sure. We'll talk about the fact that this is the public input period.
Yep.
We'll give people a place to go on the web where they can find more information. I'll also talk to you about some criticism, which you know you're going to get that,
Absolutely.
right? But there are 5 key areas. We've got a graphic for this. 5 key areas that you folks identified. We're going to try to touch upon each one here. Infrastructure, of course, our bridges, roads, water systems, etc. Public safety, fire and police, municipal operations, which we'll touch upon, economic development, which I'm interested in, and of course governance, which I guess reflects something on our leadership and what have you. So we'll touch on each category.
Sure.
Let's begin with infrastructure. It's a biggie.
It is a very big issue.
It's a biggie. You say 36 separate providers of service, if that's how you phrase it. There's 36 entities out there that look to work on roads and bridges and piping and all of it. That's a lot. Too many?
Well, there are 36 units of government in terms of maintenance of roads and highways and that kind of thing. All 36 are involved in the process. When it comes to water, for example, there's in the case of water, 90% of all the water is delivered either by the city through the water department, or Aqua, which is a county agency, and the Metropolitan Water Board. So in the case of water, it's more
right,
more centralized in terms of delivery of water.
Sure.
But you look at, and if you look at wastewater, for example, the wastewater issues in our county are handled by WEP, which is a county agency.
I read, by the way, that we're not even in compliance with the EPA standards for our wastewater. Am I correct?
Well, in essence, yes. We are in compliance with the formal regulatory issues associated with managing our wastewater, but we don't necessarily adhere to the best practices.
Sure.
Which is more guidelines.
Let's go back just in the piping and the roads and all of that. I put a call actually into Stephanie Miner's office, mayor of Syracuse. I just wanted to get her feedback on this particular issue. I did not hear back, which is fine. However, she was fairly early speaking out against the problems with infrastructure. And these are not her words really, but you could surmise museums and parks and outdoor theaters are terrific. But what are we doing if we can't pump water to these facilities, if we can't get roads to these facilities, if we can't remove, forgive me, sewage from these facilities? That's part of the problem here. And I read also, Neil, this is like the third, I think the third highest cost function, $141 million spent in 2013. So are there any easy solutions here?
Well, this is a national issue. I wish I could remember the number of water breaks nationally every year.
Yeah.
It's something like 10,000 water main
Well, I know,
breaks.
just downtown. I mean, it's nearly a daily event, if not a daily event, right? You know, so she's got a point.
She does very much. Her point is right on the mark. And the average cost of an average break is about $5,500. And we've got to invest in that infrastructure because a lot of that infrastructure originates in the late 1800s.
Right.
And
they don't last forever.
Classically, a ductile iron pipe might last for 100 years. And we're definitely toward the end of the lifetime.
Let's stay with the glamour side of this and talk about solid waste, sanitation. I mean, we've got to talk about it.
Sure.
I read in the report, I've got to look at my notes, 20 municipalities contract services for sanitation, solid waste removal. Is that the best way to get the best price, you think?
Well, I think we need to look at that more comprehensively because there are a number of our towns, for example, that don't provide that service for the residents of towns. Some of them contract out that service, and as you said, there's a very significant number of them that internalize and provide the benefit using resources of the town and village directly.
Can we move on to the next category of public safety? Near and dear to me. So you've got police, law enforcement in this category. You've got fire protection in this category, EMS, et cetera. Let's talk about fire service, fire protection first of all. 57 separate entities, I'll keep using that word, right? Providing fire protection in the city and throughout the county. In 2013, over 55 1,000 calls responded to.
With half of those calls being basically responded to by the city fire department.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, but still, I think as you look out at the county, all these different departments and districts, are there too many?
Well, I don't know that we've drawn a conclusion there's too many. But again, I think we can better provide the service. One of the things we've heard from fire chiefs and so on, it would be good to have some centralized training. Increasingly, we're seeing volunteers and their responsibilities increasingly being taken over by professionals. We have an ISO 9000 certified fire department in the city fire department. Could that fire department help in the training that maybe a lot of the volunteer units really need?
A couple questions on what you just said. So on the volunteer side, and I don't have the data on this, Neil, but I'd be willing to bet you lunch that there's not a single department throughout the county of Onondaga that has raised their hand and say, we don't need any more volunteers, we're full. They're desperate for volunteers.
No question about it.
And secondly, did your report look at the possibility of hiring some professionals? And by the way, before I say that, as a former fire commissioner, I'll tell you, every volunteer fireman or woman I met is professional. I'm talking about paid, right?
Exactly.
Can we afford more paid personnel throughout the county? The city, of course, has paid firemen. Certain districts have, but not many. Can we pay them?
Well, I think that many of the volunteer fire departments are moving more toward professional, full-time paid.
But of course, many can't afford it, right? Many can't afford it.
It's wanting to be an increased cost.
Right.
Could we have special services, for example, be localized in some of those units and shared with other units? One of the things is maintenance of equipment.
Right.
The equipment is getting more and more sophisticated. Could we have, for example, more of a centralized or regionalized assistance?
That's a huge point. I know that came up in our discussions earlier. And in purchasing, I mean, what I learned, even just in my short stint there, a nozzle can be a couple $1,000s.
Oh, yeah.
So purchasing power, I guess, right?
Exactly.
Those are things you looked at.
I mean, our professionals in public safety are incredible.
Yeah.
Absolutely incredible, and they should be given They should be given credit for everything that they do. But it's just, how can we make them do their jobs easier? How can we better support them?
Yeah.
How can we reduce some of the costs and be more efficient?
But Neil, here comes one I got to give you, okay?
Sure.
Because when you get into the fire departments in particular, you know you're going to deal with, for lack of a better phrase, you're going to deal with some turf wars.
Absolutely.
So how do we address that?
Well,
we address that?
I think one of the things that we could consider, and it's in the report, is maybe having a Metropolitan Fire Authority.
Yeah.
And having basically the chiefs themselves and the fire departments themselves assist in getting together and coming up with ways that they can better interact and support one another.
I'm already over time. Would you believe that? So let's talk quickly on the police side of things, okay? 15 law enforcement, again, entities out there. At the very least, should we consider some type of a merger between, say, Sheriff Conway's Sheriff Department and Chief Fowler's City Police Department? Is that a possibility?
That's definitely one of the things that in the report that was recommended, is that we take a look at that and see if it makes sense. I mean, I think we can better optimize our resources. You know, in the county as a whole, we're down, I think it's 102 officers.
I read that. I was shocked.
Yeah.
Specifically, since 2007, cops are down, costs are up, and you folks in the report say that provides less time for what you called proactive police
Community
work.
policing.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So this report looks at that.
It does look at that.
I got to move on to municipal operations, regrettably. I've got more questions on the police side, but there's not time. Municipal operations, tax assessment, et cetera. Some say that there's duplication of services here again. There's a theme here, obviously, and that assessing tax rates or what have you, not necessarily fair across the board. Fair criticism?
Well, yes, I think it generally is. As I remember, there are 17 assessors, for example, throughout the county, and there are different methodologies that are used. And I think if there could be some standardization on those methodologies, I think that would be really good, and I think the commission feels that would be really good.
Do we need, Neil, I'm sorry to keep doing this to you, but do we need 36 municipal clerks?
Dan, it would appear as though we shouldn't need 36, but
that's a lightning rod comment there, because you're suggesting the reduction of jobs in government, which is not always a positive thing.
Well, I think we've talked that issue out, and one of the things is if we move forward with some of these, it's going to take years to adapt some of these things, and I think we can handle the issue more by attrition than anything else.
Okay. One last quick point on this one, too. I'm sorry to move, but you know where I'm at on this.
Yeah.
So within municipal operations, social services, I read, accounts for the single largest cost function, some $267 million in 2013. And as I looked at that, I thought, well, when I interviewed the county executive, Joni Mahoney, in your chair weeks ago, and we talked about that, she said, hey, Dan, you can complain about your tax bill, but so much of what that tax bill is New York State mandated services.
Absolutely.
How do you get around that?
The report clearly says that we need New York State to be a partner in this, and frankly, they have to step up to the plate, reduce some of the mandates to the government in Onondaga County. That would be a tremendous help to everybody that's providing services, and definitely the social services bill. Maybe the state should be taking on a larger piece of that.
Okay.
We're the only state in the U.S. where the state really drives those costs to local government.
Okay. Economic development next. This I equate with obviously just growth in the economy and job growth, right? Yep. I keep saying you, Neil, but the report states that from an economic growth standpoint, we have lagged the state, we have lagged the nation.
Yep.
I found that interesting. As I've interviewed others on this show and previous shows, I don't always get that answer. I hear that we're doing great, we're doing better, we're doing better. You say no, so I'm curious, how did we measure that and how did you come to that conclusion? I don't disagree with it, but how did you come to that conclusion?
Well, we looked at job growth going back, almost about 30 years. And basically there hasn't been significant job growth since 1970. And I think that the statistics are pretty vivid and kind of surprising.
Sure. And one thing I read in there, which was interesting to me anyway, there's a word you used, or a phrase you used, interregional competitiveness, interregional competition. Is that, if I could dumb it down, is that Fayetteville competing with DeWitt and the county competing with the city for the same maybe company coming in or the same jobs?
We do. We find that competition. And in many cases, it's a development kind of project where there's competition from one town to another as to who's going to get the next Hampton Inn or whatever.
Right, that's what I mean, sure.
Whatever the project is. And we really, from our perspective in terms of the commission, we think that we should be working together and not competing against one another.
That could be hard to get through, you know that.
Oh, I definitely know that. Do we need in Onondaga County to have two industrial development
a lot of tension there.
Organizations.
A lot of tension there.
Absolutely.
And we saw essentially a merger between the Metropolitan Development Association and the Chamber of Commerce. So we've done it on different levels, right?
That should be an example to us as what we're capable of doing.
One last thing on this, also in the news is this whole Inner Harbor project, and hopefully we're going to talk about that on one of these shows. But it doesn't seem like anyone even pitches a tent around here without some type of a lucrative tax deal or a pilot. Did you guys look at that? Is there
Dan, we didn't get into those, into that particular issue. One of the things we did take a look at, too, is these other communities that have taken on this issue of modernizing government. We found there that they've had higher job growth in those individual in those individual communities than their peer cities. And why? Because they're viewed by business as a community that's better managing their own resources and using a small p, progressive communities.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, gotcha. Last issue on the list of the 5 categories is governance. Can I equate that with leadership?
Well, we haven't gone to the leadership issue. We've really focused on structure. And certainly there is where we have suggested that we consider a metropolitan form of government, and that is, as you prefaced our discussions,
correct.
That's kind of the lightning rod of this, or at least that's what it appears to be. But definitely we think that that we should take a hard look at the city and the county forming some type of metropolitan government. I mean, what we have found out is that there's $111 million in overlap of services.
Sure.
And a preliminary estimate has that we could probably save $40 million right there. And that would reflect a reduction in cost to about $200 a family.
Sure. The challenge, to be sympathetic, the challenge to the elected officials seems to be that, again, these costs keep escalating, if for no other reason, just inflation, but costs keep escalating. And again, we're losing population, we're losing the tax base, we're losing revenues. And that's a tough one. I mean, I don't know that you've got a solution for that, but that's one of the things facing anyone who's in government right now, correct?
No question, particularly the tax cap. The tax cap has put pressure on all 36 units of government. And many people think it's just the city that is in difficult financial shape. But with an extended tax cap over the next decade, our preliminary analysis showed that there are 20 out of the 36 units of government that would be in financial distress.
Okay, you're putting a stake in my heart now on that one. You know that because on my day job, I read that, and that's crucially important because if they're in deficits, that could lead to default. I'm not suggesting it would, but look at cities in Chicago, in Illinois. That's a problem because it would increase their borrowing costs. It causes uncertainty in the financial markets. Nobody wants the debt, the municipal bonds.
Yeah.
That has to be addressed.
It does have to be addressed.
It has to be addressed. You talk about unsustainable, that's a big problem.
No question. And clearly people have to understand it's just not an issue with the city.
Okay, so now stop right there because there's already some initial criticism that this is a bailout of the city of Syracuse. You're going to say no.
No.
You're shaking your head.
Right.
Well, I need more than that. Tell the it's not. You're not coming to the rescue of Syracuse.
I tend to be, and I say this quite frequently, I'm a water guy and a wastewater guy. My history with O'Brien.
That's what we like about you.
And we have problems with infrastructure, not just in the city. We have problems with infrastructure throughout the county. If we're going to solve those kinds of problems, we have to take a bigger picture look at those types of issues. And we've got to rally a larger pool of resources to address those issues.
Are you in the camp, Neil, and I bet I know the answer to this, but are you in the camp that feels that for the county to do well, you need a vibrant city of Syracuse?
Absolutely there. One of the things that we looked at was where are people resident and where do people work? 77% of the people in Onondaga County live in a different municipal jurisdiction than where they work. We're all
I'm one of them.
I'm
one of them.
We're already interconnected. And if we are interconnected, why don't we work together to mutually solve the issues that we have?
I don't have an argument for that.
Yeah.
But here's you're an invited guest and you know I like you. But here's part of the criticism though, okay? I'm forewarning you.
Sure.
Initially already I'm hearing this, and as people knew I was doing the show, ask him this. Some people are saying that this dream team that was assembled to come up with the consensus report, and they're great people, great leaders, I no argument, that you went through and you identified problems that exist. And some would say, well, that's the easy part. And you didn't necessarily come up with some concrete solutions yet. You're looking for the public and eventually the politicians to solve some of those problems?
We came up with 51 preliminary recommendations. And in the end, the citizens of Onondaga County have to fundamentally decide what kind of government do they want to deliver services. So what we have done is we put out a preliminary report to get that feedback from the public.
Okay, but here's part two of my problem, okay? You're in this public input period, and we'll give you, by the way, information on how you can participate in this because you do want public input.
Absolutely.
But Neil, I mean, you saw the public input just over the I-81 project, and that's a specific road through the city.
Yeah.
You've got a bunch of stuff here. I mean, your phone is going to ring off the hook. You know that.
It's already ringing, Dan.
What are you going to do with all the information?
We're using Eric Maurer Associates to help us. Where we are tabulating every response that we get. The commission will be reviewing that response in a lot of detail, and we're going to be analyzing where the public thinks we should be moving and modernizing government, and where the public thinks as though we shouldn't. There definitely is a lot of low-hanging fruit.
Correct. There also is some concern that as we consolidate, if we do that, that some neighborhoods, some sections of our community may be left behind, their needs may be unmet. You're looking at that.
Absolutely. One of the things we took a look at was, again, these other communities that have taken this on. And what we found, in fact, was that in almost every one of them, there was an increase in the diversity of governance as a result of their modernizing.
I know that's an issue. Just a couple minutes left. Couple more quick questions here. As I looked at the attendance sheet, noticeably absent from your report were the school districts.
Absolutely.
You were just afraid to touch the school districts, it seems to me.
I don't think we're afraid of anything, but I think that tackling one thing and trying to do that analysis as best we could was where we were really focusing on. Frankly, in my own personal opinion, and I've got 9 grandchildren that are in schools in the area, those students deserve complete, undivided attention on how we deliver the educational service to them without being diluted by other things on the table. So the Commission for Modernization of Government consensus is recommending that we have another commission to look at specifically at schools.
You remember, oh gosh, was it some 20 years ago, the now infamous Connie Chung interview, where she leans in and, whisper in my ear, right? So just between you and I, Neil, with the camera rolling, 1, 2, 3 years out from today, realistically, what are your expectations? What comes out of this report that you've plopped down on Central New York?
What I would wish for is I'd wish that we would pick out 10 or 12 of these items I refer to as low-hanging fruit. Some of those are, we have a sanitary district in Onondaga County, 15 houses and 1 pump station. Does that make any sense?
Not to me.
No. But we got a bunch of those. We have towns and villages where they're all on different financial management platforms. Why don't we get that all units of government in the county be on the same financial management platform?
And Neil, quickly, 1, 2, 3 years out, if we do nothing, what is your worry?
I worry that my children and grandchildren aren't going to be in Onondaga County. They're going to move to a place where they feel as though there's going to be more opportunity. And this community has given me some extraordinary opportunities. I want them to have the same kind of thing.
I'm with you there. You and your committee are looking for public input. We'll try to help out. You can visit their website at consensuscny.com. Get some information on the report, some low-hanging fruit we can talk about, all the bullet points, and offer your comments, questions, opinions, anything. You'll take it. Keep it clean. I read that. You don't want some of the stuff we see on Syracuse.com, but legitimate questions and concerns, you can go right to that website.
Absolutely.
I'll tell you, I'm excited about this, and I know this is going to be a newsmaker for a while. At some point, we'll have to have you guys back with maybe an update after the final recommendations come out. But Dr. Neil Murphy, thank you very much for joining us. I know we're early on this, but it's difficult to summarize this in a short period of time, but you did a great job. I appreciate you joining us on Central.
Dan, you're a good friend, and I really enjoyed it.
Glad to have you. You can visit us also online. Don't forget at foxsyracuse.com. Maybe in a show or two, I'll read you some of the emails we've been getting. They're not all positive, Neil, I should have you know. But we'll read some emails, but we want to hear from you on this program and others, and ideas for future shows as well. That's on foxsyracuse.com. That concludes this program. From all of us here at Central on both Fox 68 and My 43, I'm Daniel Pluff. Thanks for watching.